千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. As always, I want to extend my welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we are ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. We also talked about Lao Tzu. Who was he? And also noting that the name Lao Tzu could be Romanized in two different ways as well. The first character is Romanized the same way, Lao, in both the old system and the new. Zi, the character meaning master, the honorific, is spelled differently depending on the system. I've used the old system in my books because that's the tradition. That's what, for the last century or so, that is what people have been using. So I wanted to stick with that as to not cause a lot of confusion. In the future, though, the world is probably moving on to the pinyin system. Last time, we talked about who Lao Tzu was. He was a scholar. He was not just any scholar of his time, but the most knowledgeable, the most prominent scholar, which was the reason why he was able to serve as the royal archivist for the king. The king, the emperor of the Zhou, the Zhou Dynasty. So this was not a trivial achievement, far from it. This was one of the highest possible positions that one could get as a scholar. Lao Tzu loved to teach or share the teachings of the Tao. He was known for that. He was legendary for that. And Confucius, who was a much younger man compared to Lao Tzu, specifically sought him out to learn from him, became his student. And legend also has it that even after Lao Tzu left his position as the royal archivist, essentially like the librarian for the emperor, he continued to teach, continued to share the Tao. It was what he knew. It was what he loved. And finally, Lao Tzu the Sage. It is important to note that in the Tao Te Ching, penned by Lao Tzu, he talked a lot about the ancient sages, about the greatness, the wisdom of these ancient ones. He never once talked about himself as a sage. He did talk about himself trying to learn and emulate from the ancient sages. He talked about how in the process of that, his own cultivation made him very different from most people, where most people loved big crowds and noisy activities. He preferred quiet solitude, where people were exacting, scrutinizing, shrewd in everyday calculations, trying to gain an advantage. Lao Tzu pointed out that he didn't care about all that. He would appear to others as being rather obtuse, rather dumb, not really with the program, not really looking out for himself. but that was because he was detached from materialistic competition. He was detached from the rat race, even back then, trying to gain some kind of material advantage. He was much, much more focused on cultivating contentment, joy, happiness. Because of this, a master who did not see himself as a master, a sage who did not proclaim himself as a sage, he was considered to be the foremost sage of his time. Chuang Tzu, another sage in the Tao tradition who came after Lao Tzu, roughly a century after, of course, never had the opportunity to meet Lao Tzu in person. Nevertheless, Zhuangzi learned from the recorded teachings of Lao Tzu, learned from the Tao Te Ching, and considered himself to be a disciple of Lao Tzu as well. In his writings, in his stories, Zhuangzi described Lao Tzu as the foremost sage of his time. So it is the three different attributes of Lao Tzu that I wanted to highlight for everyone last time: the scholar, the teacher, and the sage. This is where we ended up, and this is where we pick up and continue for today. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.